Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our guest speaker session. This is our last one, so I am very emotional. I hope you are too. But enough about that. Let me introduce our very distinguished speakers. We have not one, but two guests today, both of which are going to be able to talk to us a great deal about being a real leader. So first, allow me to introduce Master Sergeant Don Robbins. Master Sergeant Robbins is a United States Army National Guard NCO with over 20 years of operational experience, serving her country and community in different capacities, including administrative, project management, personal recruitment, and operations. During her service, Master Sergeant Robbins has been awarded the Army Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal, and Texas Adjutant General's Individual Award, with many other recognitions not noted here. Master Sergeant Robbins' background includes a BA in Public Policy and Government from Eastern Connecticut State University and Sergeant Major Academy DL Class 48. So, Master Sergeant Robbins, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, and allow me to introduce Major Monique Allen. Major Allen is a United States Army and Army National Guard commissioned officer with military experience in the intelligence community, having served in Afghanistan with the Aviation Support Battalion and in Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with the 36th Infantry Division. Additionally, Major Allen has served as company commander for the 1st Air Cavalry Brigade and operations officer and deputy commander for the 636th Expeditionary Military Intelligence Battalion and 71st Expeditionary Military Intelligence Brigade. Major Allen received her BA in Foreign Language and Military Science from Old Dominion University, graduated from Captain's Career Course, and is currently enrolled in the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. Among her many awards and decorations, Major Allen has been granted the Iraq Campaign Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, and Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. So, Major Allen, welcome as well. My first general question is, how do your shoulders not get bogged down from carrying the weight of so much on your shoulders, both physically, your decorations, but also metaphorically, leadership wise? Actually, that was more of a general question. Let me talk briefly about the questions. So the students have sent so many good ones that I would like to actually just focus on what they've given us. So let me go with the recurring themes first. So Master Sergeant Robbins, this goes to you. When it comes to being a leader, how would you define it? What does being a leader really mean?
So in short, I feel leadership is the art of influencing, where you're inspiring others. It could be one person or it could be thousands of people to accomplish a vision or a mission. That's what I see as leadership.
Okay. So my next question would be, as far as persuading people, how do you persuade people to follow you? You know, what's gonna make them listen to you the first time or the second time?
That's a great question. You have to be a good listener. I like to listen to people. And with that, you got to put people first. You can't accomplish anything without people. They're our most precious commodity. And if I listen to them, if I find out what their needs or motivators are, then that's where I can help possibly influence them to accomplish that vision, because they could have the same vision as me. they could see the same goal as me. So listening to people and having empathy, humility, all that combined with great communication will help you become an effective leader.
Okay, so understanding what people need in listening, is that, so the next question deals with inspiring people to follow you out of loyalty rather than fear.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that listening is what's required to get loyalty, or is there any more to it than that?
Yes. You have to, again, you have to know the person or the people, the group. Kind of like with a teacher in the high school setting. My husband, your math teacher, right? You're there to teach math, but really, if you know your students, if you know more about them, you can get that rapport from them for them to accomplish those assignments, or for them to maybe turn around to where maybe they didn't like math, but now they love math. Using that as an example. Same thing with us in the military. With me, with building a team. Getting to know. So it's not just they're a soldier, but they're a soldier who is a parent, a husband, a wife, a leader in their community with their church. So just getting to know them, yes, and finding out what drives them will help you inspire or lead them towards that vision.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that as far as motivation is concerned, it's more about finding what motivates them rather than impressing the motivation upon them, if that makes sense?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Because especially with the younger generation, with the Generation Y, they're a lot more diverse than my generation, and they want to help with a cause. So a lot of times with the younger generation, the careers that they're going into may not be necessarily like my generation, where work hard, if you don't like your job, just keep doing your job. But I feel like they're more they want to do it because of a purpose, of a higher calling.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's why we do it. That resonates with me for sure. Okay, so let's talk about, I want to get to the military focused things in a bit, but I want to still stay a little general. What about problems with legitimation? So how do you maybe prove to a group where maybe the roles aren't quite so broad or strongly defined, where a leader isn't necessarily a rank or something? How do you legitimate yourself so people know that you're in charge?
That's a great question. Actually, one of my favorite quotes is from he's retired now, Command Sergeant Major Daly. If I have to remind someone that, and he would say, if I have to remind someone that I'm a sergeant major, then I'm probably not doing my job. Same thing for me. If I have to remind them that I'm the master sergeant, I'm not doing my job. Wait a minute, did I lose what the question was there? So if I get in a situation, especially when I'm coming to a new team, you have to, in order to legitimize it, as you said, you have to enforce a standard and discipline too. You have to make sure that, if just like with the school setting, for students, there's policies and procedures, codes, dress codes, for everything. And so as a leader, you have to make sure you're enforcing those policies, those procedures in accomplishing that vision or that goal. And, again, by doing that, legitimizing where you're gaining that trust, that respect, that rapport, with them, because if they don't feel, if they're not happy, if they're seeing things happening and they're like, wait a minute, I'm trying to achieve this vision, we're trying to achieve this vision, but some of these are not, going in the same pathway, it's going to definitely cause a problem with your team, with accomplishing whatever that mission is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the team is definitely everything. You can't lead without the team, but the team can't be a team without a lead.
Yes.
I like it. Chris has his hand up. Chris, do you want to tag in? What's up?
I definitely want to. So playing off that, a lot of our students that we have at Birdville, and students that we'll have in the future school semesters, these are kids that are building their own projects. I've had a chance to talk to one kid who has his own small business. He repairs computers. We have kids that are in student council, all this stuff. How would you, in your experience, translate standardizing discipline and procedures for a high schooler to implement when working with volunteers? It's not like, for example, Chancellor Gerard has faculty and staff where, of course, leadership hinges on that respect, but he is by default their leading officer, and that's how they get their salary. But for, let's say, a kid like Becca or Amy or Leah, where they have a club or they want to start a small business or something in the community, how would you encourage or give them advice on implementing that leadership philosophy of discipline and standardization, where these kids are not getting paid and they could easily just say to their leader, you know what, I don't want to work with you anymore?
Right. Hey, that's a great question. Another favorite saying of mine is, don't worry about things you can't control. Only worry about things you can control, or you have an impact, you can make an impact. You got to really make sure you're focusing on the reason why you're doing it, which is usually your passion, your drive, right? Not everyone is going to be like you. Not everyone is going to. Being that example with possibly getting others to follow you could help, towards that. But also, you can make suggestions, not like critical, but, kind of encourage those, to do that. But, for sure, you can't be like, hey, I'm the leader, I'm the president of the Spanish club, and this is what, so not everyone, you can't expect everyone to be on board with that if you're in that type of volunteer type situation and stuff. And, just do your best, and, you surround yourself with others that are on the same page as you, that could help you as well. You recruit, part of leadership is also talent management. So that's, recruiting, training, and then retaining. So as a high school student, you can recruit others that you see within your community and have them come join that volunteer organization that you're doing.
Yeah. That was a great answer. Thank you so much. So we have another great one that popped up in the chat. And if you don't mind, I'm going to try to fuse that with another question that was asked from the class. So the question is, how does the leadership role differ when you're in maybe the planning stage or defining the mission, or when you're recruiting, versus when you're maybe in the thick of it and you're really just carrying out the mission, so to speak? That was the question in the chat. And then the other part, are there different types of leaders, maybe different roles, different environments?
Yes.
Time to lead one way, time to lead another way.
So with the first question, I think what you're asking is, as a leader, what are the practices in the beginning stages, you're saying, of planning, and then
Yes.
execution? And that kind of goes in line with what type of leader you are too, I think. So I guess if I was to pick a type, And a type that others have told me, which it's a servant leader. So I am a servant leader. It is a hard, a hard type of leader too. But being serving others is my passion. That's what keeps me, to keep doing it. Because of that, I like to put others above myself. And I love to see their success too. I mean, that's what drives me. But there's some weaknesses to that as well. So, but I am a little democratic too, because honestly, especially with the younger generation, I feel like if you implement more critical thinking, out of the box type of stuff, you know what I mean? Like when I started as a recruiter, we just had MapQuest and the internet just came out, right? And now my recruiters are on social media, using Instagram and Zoom, all these platforms and stuff. And actually this is, newer for me because everything was face to face, back then, as far as, these panels. So I really like to implement my team, because a lot of them may have great, solutions or ideas for whatever, that plan is that we're about to implement. And then when I implement it, once we choose, I guess in my style, I will choose, out of that, but again, I like to have everyone's input with it. But with implementing it, making sure that everyone is doing their part, everyone, and it doesn't have to be the same. Honestly, as a leader too, with my team, all my recruiters, my soldiers, they all have different strengths and weaknesses. So we actually balance them out within each other, which is awesome. And also helping those that have the weaker weaknesses, you seeing the strengths being demonstrated so that they can work on that as well. So that's how I operate as a leader.
Mhm.
And then,
I think that
I guess the other types could be charisma. You're charismatic. I'm not I'm not that great as that. I have some peers, some friends that are great at that. They can just walk in a room and they've got that charisma, right? Where there's a magnet, people follow them. There's also types of leaders where I have friends that may want to come in and just make changes. They just want to make changes right away. I like to observe things more and then decide later on, because why change something that works? That's how I feel sometimes. And then there's type of leaders where it's my way or the highway. Another type of leader is the democratic, where everyone will have input in there. And then there's some leaders that are just hands off. They're just they just let the team run themselves. So and of course all those different types have their strengths and weaknesses too.
Well, Master Sergeant Robbins, I think that was sort of the point I wanted you to get to when I asked the question about leadership role differing. It's a different kind of leadership when you're trying to set the goals versus when you're trying to accomplish the goals. And I think you addressed that very well. The whole idea that involving the rest of the team in making the decision, I always tell my staff and students when we work together, people tend to support what they create. So if they have a hand in developing it and developing that vision, they're far more likely to contribute to solving it. And you really address when you go to accomplish the mission, first of all, that leadership by example. Not everyone's a charismatic leader, like you pointed out. They're not going to follow you just because you're you for the most part. And if that was the case, you would only have a few leaders, those who had that personal charisma. But if leadership is something that can be taught and something that can be learned and something that can be exercised, then it goes more towards the things you were discussing about knowing your strengths and weaknesses of your team, letting everyone play to their strengths and develop their weaknesses, and leading by example. So I think that was a great sort of compare and contrast with different leadership styles in different situations. I appreciate you covering that for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd also like to I couldn't tell you the types, but it just seemed intuitive to me that there were probably different ways to lead, and you definitely addressed that. Okay, so if y'all would not mind, Major Allen is back in, so I would like to bring her into the discussion. Major Allen, are you with us?
Yes, good morning. I'm so sorry about that. I had another emergency call pop up.
Oh, you are good. You are good. We definitely have the ball rolling, so let's just keep it going. Okay, so let's talk about when there's different people, because Master Sergeant Robbins talked about having different people for different roles. What happens when worlds collide and cooperation isn't possible? What happens when you have to handle conflicts or deal with power disputes between your personnel? How do you manage that?
A great question that I feel like, so maybe let me back up real quick to a little bit of experience, and I apologize for not being on the beginning. So I've been 13 years essentially active duty, and I've only been in the Army. I've not had any other experiences. I graduated college and went right into the Army. I will tell you that that is a skill set that has taken me a long time to learn. And fortunately, I had good examples of leaders that, you know, when challenges and conflict arise, it's facing them head on and you know, getting to it immediately. And I think that that's what I have learned. And I hope that, you know, all of you young leaders or aspiring leaders get after that very early in your career, or you're you know, in school and with conflict, but addressing it head on immediately is really what you need to do. And I mean, I think that can come in a myriad of fashions or ways, but I have found that just one-on-one, I sit that person down, or those two people, if it's, you know, between two others that are, you know, fellow leaders, or I'm addressing it with a fellow leader. I just, you can't let it linger, and you can't let that conflict continue to build, because it only gets worse. And the Army, we say this a lot, that nothing, you know, bad news or bad conflict doesn't get better with time. So just addressing it right away is a tactic that I have adopted. And I think in this role, my current role, where I have a lot of very senior, amazing NCOs or non-commissioned officers like Master Sergeant Robbins working for me, you know, that I just have to pick up the phone. I have to stop what we're doing and address it. So.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Also, the fact that you said that it's taken you time, which is to say, this is a skill that needs to be developed, correct?
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
is. It's one of the hardest things we do as leaders. You know, it really is. So developing it young is the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in your experience of trial and error, when you try to sit them down and talk about it, how often was it a productive conversation? Did it ever not go anywhere?
I think as I've kind of gotten older and had to face this more and more, you know, and I think as we progress in rank in the Army or key positions, we are faced with more of that directly, that we've got to manage conflict, or we've got to manage some kind of challenge in leadership. I can think of my most recent example. I was deployed to Kuwait, and I had two really strong-headed, strong-willed NCOs working for me that just were not seeing eye to eye. And I'll tell you, I think I listen a lot as a leader. Master Robbins, you know, I got to hear her talk a little bit about different styles of leaders, but I do take a lot of feedback from my subordinates. So a lot of listening, but I was really like conflict management. I would allow one person to talk and not let the other person interrupt, and then let the other person talk. And I felt like it was just much more constructive as I managed their conflict. Yeah, kind of to a T, if you will, kind of giving a lot of times. And when conversations began to get heated, or, you know, nasty words if you will, sort of thrown about, as there sometimes are in the Army. I stopped that, nipped that in the bud, and allotted everybody their time. And I think that was one of my most successful moments of true conflict amongst two leaders. That was really was probably a better example, but I really managed it, and that's something I've had to learn how to do and be brave enough to do. Sorry, Christian, I think you have a question.
Yeah, Chris, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our students here are, leaders. Thankfully, CAB and AVID has incredible students. We have students currently at TCC that are high schoolers. So I would love to translate a lot of this stuff to how they can implement it in civilian life while they're in college. I know some of them might join the military, some might not. One question I really have that I want you guys to dig into and please give us hard answers to is, how do I frame it? And I do want to get back to the whole figuring out conflict of internal operations, because that's something a lot of leaders in professional sector deal with. But one of the big ones that I think the students really need to take from today is, how do they overcome stressful and exceptionally pressured experiences in their academic and professional lives in a manner that allows them to translate it into success? And more importantly, let's say you have a kid that has a lot of grit, this kid's just naturally tough in that sense, but his team may not necessarily have that mindset. How does that kid, maybe it could be a student government or a Boy Scout or an ROTC kid, how did he get the rest of his troops and his team in a professional, mandatory setting to rally and not feel like they're losing control of the issue?
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's like two questions that I got from that. So when a student encounters some type of obstacle, I think it makes you stronger. Like you have to make mistakes. You have to encounter these obstacles, because it's going to make you a stronger. And I tell that to my kids. I mean, not just my kids, but my young soldiers. I mean, it's going to develop them and make them a much better person. And, we've all, and I tell them too, like empathy, especially if I've been in their shoes before, maybe in that certain situation. I mean, all of us here have been through some, a lot of challenges, obstacles, and it's okay. Like it's all right. It's okay to have these obstacles, and the biggest thing is getting them to solve problems, to what's the solution. Don't harp so much on, oh, this is a problem, and then kind of break down, and then, or if there's the wall, you turn around, you walk away. No, what's the problem? Let's solve this. What's the solution? And if you start thinking that way with any type of situation, then you'll be fine. You're gonna do great. And just kind of go back onto, what can you control? What can you what can you impact? And if it's something that you can't control, don't allow it to overcome you. And that's in building with resiliency, being more resilient, which will make you a better person. We talk about leadership, but I like to see it as making you a better citizen, a better person, because not just with the military, but as a whole, because I'm a mother, I'm a church member, I have a lot of great friends in my community. So as in your whole life. And then the other question was, what was the other question?
Something to the effect of taking bad news, and whether individually or as a group, well, actually as a group, getting people to rally and move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of going back to what I've mentioned before, if you're trying to accomplish a vision or a goal, just having that empathy, the communication, and then reminding them I don't know if you've heard or if y'all study Simon Sinek, but he's one of my favorite, leaders. Finding the why, the cause, why are you doing that to begin with? And if you forget about all the other conflict or the obstacles and you focus on why you're doing this, then you'll overcome that obstacle. You'll overcome that challenge.
Okay. Yeah. Remember what you're doing it for. I
Can add
agree.
just one quick thing to that too, and
Yeah.
I've started to like allude to it a little bit. Excuse me. It's as a leader in whatever echelon, and to your point, Chris, whether it's government, student government, or it's in academics, what motivates people? And we've had to learn in the Army, we're really behind on this, to be honest, but understanding what motivates people and why they're motivated or how they are motivated to work. And all of them obviously are going to be different, whether it's school or in government or in the Army. We're all humans, we all have unique drive, but understanding really, and I think that can start young, understanding what motivates people to and how they're motivated to accomplish a goal. And some may be there just because they want to check a block, and some are passionate about their government and improving their school. So understanding what motivates people, I think, is really important in a leader, and not everybody's cookie cutter.
So can I ask a follow-up question? How about this? Major Allen, I know how about this? When you are in the military and the stakes are higher, let's just say that the stakes are higher. Is it easier or more difficult to get the troops together? Because I guess the imperative is so great. And yeah.
I think, good question. I mean, I think that generally speaking, your troops have, and people that work for you have an understanding of the severity of what they're about to go into, right? So I think the intuitive answer would be yes, people are more motivated because they understand that, one, we're putting their lives at risk, or we're putting somebody else's life at risk, or the decision that we're about to make can impact a village in Afghanistan, right? But I'm sad to say, and I think it goes back to we're humans, but no, it's not always that easy, and I think it still goes into it's finding how people are motivated and why they're motivated. So, unfortunately, it's not just because of the severity of the situation is it easier to lead people to get to the right, or get to where you want them to be. Maybe that's not the right way, but so unfortunately, my opinion, no.
Yeah, no, understandable. Chris, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, I really want to play off this subject matter in particular. So translating that to a non-military environment, let's say the stakes aren't, intense in the traditional sense of you're being deployed with a unit out there in Kuwait, but more so, let's say and this is more for the students in this classroom that want to be leaders or are leaders already. Let's say you have a project that is due in several months, and for whatever reason, one of your teammates is just not handling the stress very well, or maybe it is a whole team that lost one of their members, they quit, and it demoralized the unit, or it could be a student government president or a student council, chair who is legitimately struggling because this is their first experience as a leader. What advice can you throw at them for rallying their guys in a setting that is truly not, in my opinion, crazy stressful, but it could be stressful to the individual they're working with, or overcoming their personal hurdles of being new to leadership and having that opportunity to try to serve their community? How would you recommend giving advice to these students, translating your experience in military to the civilian life?
Great question. I mean, you got to start out with the vision, right? You know, you got to believe, you got to have the buy in the vision as a leader. You have to buy into that vision, right? And then again, just with that passion, and then getting to know the people, you know, your fellow students, your coworkers, and showing them that vision. That's how you'll hopefully will be able to get them to follow you with that, you know, with accomplishing that vision. So, you know, getting to know them. And you know what the challenges, like you mentioned, you know, it's not like I was a young girl and I said, I want to be a leader when I grow up. You know, that's not something that, and honestly, you know, had I had, you know, this type of platform back then, I mean, who knows, honestly, you know, if you find something you're passionate about, um, you know, that's how I fell into leadership. I just found something that I enjoyed, that I loved, and you know, in getting students to join the military, you know, having them listen to me, hear my story, and then they were starting to see, wow, I could do what you're doing. I could follow you, you know, that kind of thing. You know, and then in becoming a leader, where now I have a group of recruiters and I'm trying to get them to accomplish that goal that I have as well. But again, you got to focus on the why, you know, the cause of why you're doing that. Because, you know, if you do that, as far as the challenges, being a leader, I'm still not an expert. I feel like leadership's always evolving. I'm always learning something new. So, you know, there's a lot of resources that you can, that are at your hands now, you know, especially with technology, you know, Audible books, there's blogs, there's books, there's people, mentors. You know, if I was a student, you know, my teachers were mentors, my family members, you know, depending on their profession too. There's a lot of people in your community that you can take as a mentor, and they can help you. Even for myself, I have mentors, and it's not just in the military, but I have mentors that are out in my community, with my church, with my friends, and I love meeting new people, especially in the careers they're in. Because, like, for example, over the Thanksgiving break, one of my family members, I met her sister-in-law. She's in marketing, and she was telling me about some of the leadership challenges that she was having. And you know, I was chatting with her, and I said, "Hey, we've got the same, you know, we have the same challenges, you know, so we're kind of bouncing off of each other." So, you know, as a new leader, I feel that as long as you're open-minded, as long as you know, you're a good listener, you observe, you're always developing, you're learning from everywhere, you know, you're not going to have any problem. Because, you know, I know there did come a time when I first got into the position where I was questioning myself, like, man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can lead these guys. You know, I don't, you know, being a leader is the most rewarding too. So again, if you're passionate about something, you can definitely develop as a great leader into that. I hope that answered your question.
I mean, it did to me a great deal. What I took out of that is you have to believe in it first. And if you can keep that as your guiding light, the leading will follow from it. So Major Allen, would you like to chime in on this topic, or really any topic, or, you know, expand on that in any way?
Yeah, thanks. I think Master Robbins, great job, because, you know, probably key takeaway that is not a shocker to anybody, but leadership is hard, and it's hard work. And, you know, Chris, going back to one of your examples that you mentioned, or, you know, your questions was, you know, you're in a group setting, you've got a group project that you've got to get after, and somebody drops out or somebody's struggling. I think it goes back to one of my answers in the beginning. You know, if you lead through kindness and respect, and you address that head on with that individual that's struggling, trying to understand why they're struggling, sitting down with them, that builds trust with those two people, right? You as a leader and that individual that's struggling. And I think the fellow, folks in the group are going to see that you are compassionate, you want to be successful, and you're working hard to being a good leader. So embracing whatever that person is going through. And in the Army specifically, we do have this fine balance of, what we call over coddling to ensure that somebody is going to be successful, and being too hard on them. And it's that middle of the road. And I think that translates anywhere in academics or in student government. Sitting down with that individual, understanding what they're going through will help you find out what motivates them or what help that they need. And then rallying the other group leaders or other group members to get behind it, because you all ultimately have a goal at the end of the day to finish that project or to run the student government. So I think, just always, it is okay to be a leader that is kind and respectful and not over aggressive and compassionate. And I think that translates everywhere. So.
Yeah, I agree. And it reminds me of Master Sergeant Robbins' quote about, if you have to remind people, if you have to be commanding, if you have to, it's, that's probably not a good way to be. So we folks are pretty much out of time. Thank you again, y'all, for joining us and giving us this fantastic advice. Before we go, I would like to make a quick announcement that the students, if you please complete the career mentor applications. If you have not yet, applications will be due at the end of the fall semester. And this is the only way we can track your progress and help you work towards being a Parchment Fellow. So please, folks, consider that and fill out the application. And will you join me one more time in a round of applause for our two distinguished speakers? They're
Thank you all for
applauding.
inviting us.
Absolutely. No, this was so much fun. Okay, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And before we cut off, if I can add, and I know the chancellor might want to say something because this is also the last workshop for the semester. I do appreciate y'all sharing your time to talk to the students about leadership. It is exceptionally important because, being a leader allows you the ability to have the confidence to do anything in life, in my experience, or from what I've seen from my colleagues and from my mentors. And I think any student that wants to do great things has to be a leader to some capacity. So I appreciate y'all sharing your time. If there's any other, if the students have any questions, we would love to share them with you via email in the future. If you have anything that comes to your mind, any advice that you think, or any articles or books you recommend, you have my personal contacts, you have the chancellor's contacts, you have Jacob's. We would love to forward those to our kids. And I'll let the chancellor, if he has anything he wants to say real quick, and then I guess we're good to go and we can end the recording.
I would just like to thank you all again for being here with us. It has been a pleasure to see representatives of our military come and talk to young students like this. And when I was growing up, the whole idea of a master sergeant was that's the person who yells at you loudest. And it's great to hear that our military adapted and is learning, like you said, we're just now coming to this. We have to inspire people. We have to find what motivates them. We have to find what drives them. That's the only way we keep an all volunteer military in place. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming and talking to the students, and we appreciate your time and your thoughtful responses.
Thank you, sir. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all have a good one.